Welcome to the 2019 Wceda annual meeting. I'm Dave Fredel, the Walworth County Administrator, and I'm really privileged again to be able to MC the event this afternoon. The theme of this year's meeting is opportunities for exponential growth in the age of disruption, and we're lucky to have as our keynote speaker today Todd McLees, who's a futurist and founder of TENXEcosystem, who's going to tell us about digital disruption and the workforce of the future. Well, Todd's going to tell us about the workforce of the future. I'm about to join the workforce of the past. Earlier this year, I announced my retirement from Walworth County after 19 years as county administrator. It was a difficult decision to make, but I can tell you now in retrospect that it's something that I recommend. Not necessarily the retiring part, the announcing that you're going to retire. Everybody has been really nice to me. People I've had conflicts with over the years just kind of leave me alone. They're waiting, running the clock out here, waiting for me. Co-workers who have been waiting for a work product or decisions from me have finally just given up and realized that that's not going to happen. So it's been a good 3 months here, but in all seriousness, it has been a great opportunity at Walworth County, and I've had so much support from not only our county board and the folks that I work with, but also from members of the community, and that brings me to the point here of citizens who are engaged and who've changed the county since I've been here. Wceda holds a special place in my heart. Prior to 2004, there was no economic development initiative taking place here in the county. And our organization began with a very modest start in 2005. So rather than creating a county department, a county government department of economic development like a number of counties do, the idea was to provide a modest amount of public funding and then turn the direction of the organization over to business leaders like yourself. We started with 5 directors and 1 member. Today there's over 150 Wceda members, so congratulations on that. Our original board of directors, the 5, Kevin Brunner, Jerry Welty, Joe Cardiff, Jim Simons, and Bob Spitzer. And unfortunately this past year, my friend Bob Spitzer, and one of the founding directors of Wceda, passed away in April. And we're going to recognize Bob here later in the program, but he's represented by his wife Dolores, who's over at the keynote table, who's also been great sponsors of Wceda over the years. So many of you in attendance have So many of you that are here have devoted so many hours to achieving and maintaining the success of this organization. I've seen a number of you, and I get in trouble if I started to try to name everybody individually because I forget people. But I really enjoy going to the board meetings. It is a very focused group, always has been over the years. And the amount of time that some of you folks have put in is amazing, and I think the reason why there's 25 people here today when we started out as 5. One person that I would like to recognize, however, though, is my boss on the county board, Nancy Russell, who's here. She's over at the keynote table as well. And Nancy has been with me basically the whole time here and has been a big supporter of the Walworth County Economic Development Alliance. Even in the hard-to-love years, I think, which was a few years back, but kept the county funding going, and I'm also happy to report yesterday afternoon that we passed our county board budget with 2020 funding for Wceda included in it. So I'm happy. So I think what we'll do is let you start on your meal here. We have a number of sponsors that we're going to highlight next who have underwritten some of the speakers and things today, and we'll recognize them in a little bit. So start your meal there, and I'll be back shortly to do that introduction. We had 3 different businesses that were very generous and helped underwrite different portions of the presentation the meeting today. And this probably isn't good form because they paid for this. Now we're not going to let them finish their lunch. I'm going to call them up to present some information for you here today. So first up, we're grateful to Mercy Health for being today's presenting sponsor. Mercy was a founding member of Wceda and continues to be a strong advocate for economic development in Walworth County. One of the past presidents, Rich Gruber, my old boss, was an integral leader at Wceda in the early years. And the next person that I'm going to introduce here is Jenny Hallett, who is also very involved in a variety of different endeavors in the county and very generous with her time. And she's going to make the next introduction. So, Jenny Hallett.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to once again be the presenting sponsor of this great event. I do want to thank Derek and all of the great work that he and his team do to not only put on this event, but to really continue to support all of our businesses here in Walworth County in many, many different ways. So thank you, Derek. I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to one of our vice presidents, Lad Udy. Lad has been with Mercy Health for over 6 years, and he is our vice president of population health. He's going to share just a couple of things in reference to overall health care and how it relates to you as businesses and looking at insurance and that type of thing. So, Lad, come on.
Jenny. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great day to be here in Walworth County. As I look around the room, I see business owners, business leaders. It reminds me of a study that Mercy Health did several months ago about the economic spin-off impact of some investments that we did make in creating jobs, creating jobs in one of our markets. And we expected that it would be favorable. And what we found was astounding at the level of economic spin-off downstream impact of creating jobs. So when I look around at a room like this, it makes me wonder collectively what that impact is or if that study has been done. But as you know, jobs keep people going and people keep communities going. And it's really a noble thing to serve the communities by providing employment. As Jenny mentioned, I've been with Mercy Health for a little over 6 years. One of the things I pay attention to is legislation coming out of Washington and what impact that will have on us who deliver care. But I'd like to take a few minutes and discuss what that may mean to those of you who are paying for care through your employee base, as that's certainly something that impacts many business owners. There's a lot of discussion right now about various pieces of legislation that may or may not happen and may or may not change. You might be hearing the Democratic primaries about Medicare for all or variations on that theme. Might be wondering what that might mean for you as a business owner, for your employees, for your taxes, things of that nature. The future of the Affordable Care Act is a little bit in limbo right now too. We're waiting for that ruling from the court any day now. And that of course dictates what type of care must be covered, which type of employers need to provide coverage, etc. So this creates some uncertainty for business owners. In addition to that, there are challenges related to running a business, as you all know. Healthcare spending is one of those, meeting the budget for your healthcare spend. You want to keep your employees healthy, obviously, for their own sake, but also that keeps them at work, keeps them productive, and keeps them contributing to your mission and vision. So amidst all this uncertainty, what are some areas upon which you can focus as a business owner? There are a few things that are kind of tested, tried and true staples that prove to have downstream benefits. One of those is ensuring that employees have, and yourselves, have a primary care relationship. I can't tell you how often we have patients walk into the emergency department for relatively minor things simply because they don't know where else to go and they don't have a usual source of care. But having that usual source of care reduces expenses for employers who are often paying for that use. In addition to that, things like preventive care. These are massive public health successes, things like immunizations and flu shots, employment, different types of screenings and wellness checks. Help keep employees healthy. They do require a small investment up front. They usually have tremendous health and benefits downstream. You may have some employees who have chronic conditions like diabetes or various heart conditions. This again ties back to the primary care relationship. If there is a relationship with the provider who's helping manage that, if they have access to, occasionally they may need specialists, if they have access to the medications that they need, there's a good chance that they can stay out of the hospital, which will obviously reduce expenses on the care setting. And lastly is the accessibility piece, having the right care at the right place at the right time. There are a couple of things that Mercy Health has invested in recently to assist with that. One of those is our occupational medicine division. This is a department that has fixed locations, but can also come directly to you to do employment screenings, various other types of screening, flu shots. They can come right to your site. I'll show you a picture of that truck that we have there. We also have invested recently in virtual visits. This is essentially like a FaceTime or a Skype call with a physician for relatively minor urgent care types of issues, but they're available around the clock, so accessing care in the right time at the right place. And if the physician isn't able to assist the patient in that moment, then they can direct them to the appropriate source of care. So that's proven popular with businessmen. Of course, investing in primary care in the region, some of you may recognize some of these faces. Various providers at our Delman office, at our Lake Geneva office, who offer primary care services, as well as in the Elkhorn Clinic and our Walworth Clinic, which is just adjacent to the hospital out here in Lake Geneva. I mentioned our occupational medicine clinic before. There's a picture of that mobile unit that can come around to your work sites and the various physicians and advanced practice providers who help staff that. Lastly, one of the things we're particularly proud of is what we call cost effectiveness of care. Medicare has paid a lot of attention to this in recent years. They're holding healthcare providers accountable for not just the quality of the care that they provide, but also for the cost impact. And so they have created mechanisms such as accountable care organizations, for example, where they will hold an organization accountable for that total cost. You can see here our results from 2018, and this is dealing with Medicare patients, but what they're measuring is how much did they spend on a per patient basis in that year. And they assign patients to organizations based on where they're getting their primary care. They assume that if they're getting the primary care there, then they're coordinating the downstream referrals and other care that needs to happen. You can see that we came in anywhere between $1,400 and $1,800 below the regional and national averages, which when you think about the exponential impact of that, when we're dealing with tens of thousands of patients, we're talking about millions of dollars in savings for, in this case, because it's Medicare taxpayers. But the way that we achieve that is through an integrated care model where all the care, or most of it at least, is available under the same roof, with the primary care provider coordinating that, all the providers share the same records, so providers in one office can see what other providers, how they're helping patients. And so essentially the benefits of that model that apply here to Medicare certainly apply to the rest of the community as well, and that impacts employers and helps reduce spend. That's going to be important for the environment of healthcare going forward, and certainly something that we're proud to provide. We have a table out there in the hallway. You probably saw some of our folks out there handing out items. We'd be happy to talk about any of these things and further detail on how we can help your business. Our passion is for making life better, and we would love to do that for you and your employees. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. I apologize for sitting up here in front, but I've done my own bit to help the healthcare industry this year. I'm moving a lot slower for some reasons, so that's a great chair, and I feel wiser sitting there. See if I can make an offer on that before I leave. Our second sponsor is no stranger to the county here, Gage Marine. They're today's Inspire sponsor. And Gage and its operations is a major tourism driver for our area. And I would also point out that Gage Marine has been so involved in other endeavors, including the Visitors and Convention Bureau, and just a great corporate citizen. Inspire is a really neat program that Wceda has been running, and it facilitates connections between students in school and area businesses to facilitate future workers, which is getting to be a real issue, and trying to find them locally and keep young people living here. So here to talk about the things that Gage is doing is F.J. Frazier, who is the Chief Operating Officer.
I am a product of Mercy Healthcare. I recently had my knee scoped, I guess. So, can I get another chair for the rest of the yeah, we're pleased to be the Inspire sponsor for today's event. Inspire is a career awareness program that Wceda is heading up for the county to promote local job and career opportunities. We got involved in that last spring. His primary aim is at youth. I would encourage all of you to get involved in this program, just like everybody in the room, and you're going to hear about it in a little bit. The future of our company is the kids of tomorrow, of the kids of tomorrow. And we're only good as the people that we recruit and retain in our organizations. My name is F.J. Frazier. I have kind of an eclectic background, and am I going to work this? Okay. I joined Gage Marine last November. I don't know why I get emotional, but I do. I'm Irish, I guess. I joined in November of last year, and I finished our first year about 2 weeks ago, and it's been an amazing journey. My father was one of the first employees at Gage Marine in 1959. Sorry about this, guys. I'll be good in a second. And I kind of come full circle. I sold my business 4 years ago. We've been friends with the Gates family for a long time. And I was honored and flattered to be asked to come run the day-to-day operation at Gage Marine. Gage Marine has been around, the company itself since 1873. And it started as a transportation company, and we currently have 3 businesses: Lake Geneva Cruise Line, Gage Marine itself, which was started in 1959, and Pier 290, which is 6 years old. This company, astonishingly, I did not know this, we employ over 600 employees on a yearly basis, both full-time and part-time. So I'm here today to, one, thank all of you in the room that participate with us and help us get business. But I'm also here today to hopefully earn some of your business. I don't know. There's original Lady in the Lake. An interesting photo. And that's the original Gage Marine. That's where Pier 290 is now. Still original shape is there when you come now. At one point, we were making wooden boats there in the facility. And that's an aerial shot. Derek said I had 3 minutes to speak, and maybe that's why I got nervous. So I'm going to do my best to get done in 3 minutes. But when we got together as a group with employees, we did an exercise, and I pulled everybody together, some key employees, and we wanted to get together and define what was our unique differentiator. What do we do, or what can we do that no one else can do in our marketplace? And we kept thinking about, because we have 3 unique businesses. One's a cruise line, you got to get on a boat and go around. One is a boat, we can sell you a boat, we can fix your boat, we can store your boat. And another one is a restaurant, where you can come and have an amazing dinner on the lake and so forth. And somehow we came across, wow, we could really give you the lake life. And we can give you that experience, that memories. And whether it's a 1-hour boat ride, a brand new boat, or an amazing wedding, we truly can give you the lake life. So we've rallied behind the saying of lake life begins with Gage, and we're trying to live in that every day. The cruise line is, some of you have been on it, some of you have not. We'd love to have you come on board. We were awarded an award last year for the best meeting place, 2019, on the cruise line. We have 8 boats. We can host up from 2 to 225. Private parties, corporate outings, weddings, functions like that. And sometimes we forget some of the best things in our own backyard, and that was another reason for us to come here today. I'm using pictures because pictures are worth 1,000 words, and I only had 3 minutes. So. This is my favorite picture right here. I think this says it all. The beautiful photo there. Santa Cruz, we're in our 4th year of Santa Cruz. This is an amazing statistic, and Santa Cruz, along with the super charity called Santa Cause, that little event has raised over $250,000 in 4 years. And hats off to Nancy Watsky, who really championed this. So, if you'd like to come with your family, or your grandchildren, or your children, cruises will start on the 29th and go through January 4th. Gage Marine, it's amazing how many people I ran across that didn't know we sold boats and things like that. So, Gage Marine, we embarked on a fairly aggressive plan in the spring. We hired Bill Bruno. Bill Bruno from Majestic Marine came back, got him out of retirement. And Bill is running the day-to-day operations at the marine business. We have been a top 100 marine dealer since 2004, recognized by the marine retail industry, and we're very proud of that honor. We do in-out valet. We have a boat club. If you don't want to buy a boat, you can certainly join the club. We do service, storage, and we put piers in. Today there's 18 guys on the lake taking out piers, and I'm not one of them. So I'm thankful for that. Just a little side note about weather. I heard this. I'm not in charge of the weather either. We have our typical average of weather right now is 34 degrees and a ½ inch of snow. And it was 6 degrees yesterday morning, and we have 13.5 inches of snow already. So it's been a crazy fall. That's our boat barn. We just finished this down the lakefront. This is a venue that hosts weddings as well as we sell boats in the summertime. This will host up to 300 people. We just recently had S.E. Johnson here for an event. This is our pier crew. Valet service. And that's the boat club. Pier 290, we're in our 6th year. And I heard this saying, I think it's true. Bill was not a restaurateur. If you want to make a lot of money in the restaurant business, start with a lot of money. We have certainly taken our chops and our punches on this, but the last 3 years have been really well for us. We have a new management team in place. We have a new chef we brought on board for our catering business, and it is a beautiful venue, and we really welcome you all there for whether it's a date or a corporate outing. We are the Lakeside Restaurant. We have just launched a fireside menu, which we kind of call local serving local. We did an event 2 weeks ago. We raised over 5,000 pounds of food for the Walworth County Food Bank. It was kind of a neat event. We can, like I talked about, we can serve up to 300 people at our venues. We are expanding our catering services. We launched Lake Life Catering. We hired this gentleman named Mike Lavin, formerly with Gooseberries. He's heading up our catering division. And thank you. And we will be going, aggressively after our catering. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Just want to show you some more pictures. This is our 292 room. And I think I'm over 3 minutes, Derek, so I will wrap it up. That's the boat barn, the wedding we had this year. That's the canopies outside. So I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you all. If we can do anything for any of your businesses or your teams, your organizations, we'd love to work with you. So thank you for your time.
Finally, we're grateful to Integra Seating for being today's speaker sponsor. Integra is a strong supporter of Wceda and the Made in Walworth County program, manufacturing program that Wceda does. And they have been a very strong supporter in the past. And here to introduce our speaker and to say a few words about Integra is Greg Charnot, the president. Greg?
and I'll try to get us back on track. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to introduce the keynote speaker. It was great just sitting down and chatting with him before we had dinner, so, or lunch here. But let me tell you a little bit about Integra, and I'll try not to take too much time for those of you who may not know what we do. We design and manufacture high-quality furniture in healthcare and education markets. We specialize in the high-volume lounge and reception areas, and we also have customers in the markets of government and libraries. We use our dealerships across the United States, contract dealerships, to help us move the product all over the United States. Our company is family operated and owned to this day, with Dina and Monroe Putnam at the helm, and then the three children, Chandra, Tracy, and Jeff, actively working day to day with our business. The family, actually it was Monroe who founded the company back in 1982 with his patented version of the tube and plug construction, which is still to this day the foremost design technique that we use in our products. We're a small player in the big world of furniture. Our niche, though, is really that sets us apart from all the other big players, is we make a very durable piece of furniture, and for that reason we guarantee it for the lifetime of the product. In addition, we provide unique solutions outside our standard products that we offer. And this is very attractive to many customers who are trying to take and customize, if you would, a piece of furniture that they usually can't get from anyone else. We use technology, and we've really grown into the technology era over the last 10 years, using more in our design and development, which allows us to go speed and quickly to market. And then our quality consistency as the volumes keep picking up in our operation. We pride ourselves with, and we're known for our commitment to excellence. Excellence both from a design and product development, excellence from speed to market, as well as our high quality group of employees and our suppliers that help us achieve the overall goal of excellent customer satisfaction. We also are very environmentally friendly in our designs, as well as our manufacturing processes, and we have a very safe work environment for our employees. And as it was said, we're made in Walworth, Wisconsin, so that's all good. Like any other company, deal with growth, you have to expand. So in 2017, we bought a 52,000 square foot facility. Conveniently, it was right across the street. So for that, we doubled the size of our business. We allowed to split our operation into two sections, really. One, wood components manufacturing, and then the second one, the final assembly, upholstery, and shipping and receiving operation. And then finally, we took the office space and made a 3,000 square foot showroom so we can bring customers and designers into our facilities, and folks such as yourself for tours, and you can actually see what we make and see it in a setting that may be very attractive to you when you make your selection of the product. So I hope to see some of you in some of our future tours that we have. Now to the meat of today's get-together. Today, nationally known keynote speaker is Todd McLees. He understands the challenges and opportunities to all of us as we strive to keep companies and organizations relative and growing well into the 21st century. As was said earlier, he's a leader of Pendio Group since 2013. In 2019, he founded TENX Ecosystems, advanced manufacturing. But what I got to learn about Todd a little more was that he does a lot of other things besides just business side too, although it does relate to business. He continues his own personal growth, and having more recently earned professional certificates in the Industry 4.0 technologies from Hong Kong Polytechnic University and from MIT in supply chain management, where Todd serves as an advisory board member. He's also on the advisory board for Marquette University Center of Supply Chain Management, and he's a board member of Pathways High Milwaukee, which is a free public charter school, by the way, providing students of diverse backgrounds and exposing them to businesses and community members. And finally, he's also a board member of ADHD America, and he guides that organization as it makes a difference to the lives of the students working with this challenge. So please join me in welcoming our guest speaker today, Todd McLees.
To Greg, and is this all right? Let's say thanks to Greg and to Integra for sponsoring the talk today, and to Derek for having me at your event, and to all of you for taking the time. You know, usually when I start, the mic falls off. Why don't I switch to handheld? I'm going to switch to handheld. I'm not going to start over. I'm good. All right. So usually when I deliver a keynote like this one, and in December sometime I'll hit my 150th keynote in the last 18 months. I spent probably too much time talking about the Industrial Revolutions because they have had significant impact over the last couple hundred years. From steam, which changed the world and raised the standard of living for most of the industrialized world, to the electrification, the combustible engine, the electrification of manufacturing processes, and at the same time scientific management theory, really created the middle class in the United States and across the world. And you know, many people associate that with Ford. And then the third industrial revolution began around 1970, some would argue a little earlier, and that began the computing age. And now we're living in the fourth industrial revolution, and we have been since 2008. However, last week I was on my way to Wake Forest Innovation Quarter to work with a group in Winston-Salem of educators and industry partners. I was listening to a book on the plane, and it struck me that I've been doing a bit of a disservice to the power, the profound nature of AI. And what the age that we're entering right now really relates more to the discovery of fire 100,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution of 10,000 years ago, and then with the agricultural revolution it changed the food supply. And then along with the wheel, the written word 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. These are things that had profound impact on society and on everybody's life. And now, as we look at 2015 and beyond, it's the age of AI and IoT. And so we're in the midst of it today. But oftentimes you'll hear terms out of highly intelligent people like Andrew Ng talking about AI as the new electricity. And what I'd like you to think about for the next 45 minutes or so, I'll do my best here, is AI is the new fire. AI is the new written word. Because that's the profound impact that we're looking at. And we have this tremendous responsibility once you accept that this is not simply, if you think about the slides that you just saw, over the last 5,000 years since the wheel, there's really not been anything significant enough. Think about all of that's happened in the last few hundred years with regard to technology. There's been nothing significant enough to measure up with those historic movements. until now. And so the responsibility that we have over the next 25 or 30 years is to get it right. And the impact that that will have on our businesses, on our regions, on our stakeholders, our employees are going to be significant. There's one baseline piece of information I'd like you to understand is that if you are not 65 years of age or older, you've never worked in the U.S. economy during a sustained period of growth. That stopped in 1970. Okay? The period between 1920 and 1970, fueled by electricity, combustible engine, and other innovations of the time, were the most successful era in terms of sustained growth. But over the last 50 years, there's been a significant gap in terms of technology that's been available versus the way it's been adopted, the rate at which it's been adopted. And so what you could isolate here are the next 20 years, and when you look at the verticality of the adoption curves that are on the screen, every industrial revolution that has taken place in steam has been about 4 key areas: energy, health, communication, and transportation. Every major innovation falls under those 4 categories. Today we're talking about a 5th, which is production. For the first time, with the digitalization of production or manufacturing, this is expected to be an a period of incredible sustained growth over that 20-year period of time, fueled by the adoption of these many technologies across every industry. So, sort of doubling up on me a little bit. The next slide, oftentimes when we think about technology, we think about the coasts, especially Silicon Valley in the context of innovations that are occurring today. But the 5th computing wave, which we're in the midst of right now with cognitive compute, is actually going to most significantly impact the parts of the country where manufacturing is most significant. Okay, so where manufacturing has its biggest presence, those are the regions that will be most significantly impacted. And you can see some of the top states. When you take a look at the 8 states of the Great Lakes states, if you will, from eastern Minnesota to upstate New York, you're talking about 100,000 of the 250,000 manufacturers in the United States, 40% of the manufacturers in the United States. There's an incredible concentration here, and the impact that cognitive compute or intelligent systems will have in manufacturing is expected to be significant. And the opportunity that we have is to reimagine. It's to reimagine the processes. This is why we can't think of this as the next electricity, because we sort of take that for granted today. When you think of it as the next fire, the next example of the written word or the wheel, there's this greater responsibility that we have to really rethink the processes like Ford did with the electrification. The reason he won, everybody electrified their factories, but he reimagined the process. He changed the way they made vehicles. He reduced the price of vehicles because of that from $840 to $250. And they dominated the marketplace. At a time where the number of registrations for vehicles in the United States went from 8,000 to millions, their market share, Ford's, went from 9% to 54%. Okay? And this was a function of not just the assembly line, which is a little simple, but it's also the division of labor. The division of labor is important, and we have to be less incremental as we think about things in order to deal with wicked problems. So here's a how many of you took philosophy in school? For a semester or so. There's a problem called the trolley problem, a dilemma called the trolley problem. You are in a trolley, you're barreling down a hill, and there are 5 people in front of you. You're not the driver of that trolley, but there is a lever next to you. And if you pull that lever, the trolley will divert to a second track. And when the trolley diverts, it will certainly kill 1 person. So do you make the ethical decision to kill 1 person versus taking the chance that 5 may die? You just think about that for a second. Know that that's always been a question we didn't really have to answer other than maybe over a cup of tea. But today, if you're a programmer of an autonomous vehicle, you have to answer that question. What will the vehicle do? What safety standards will we put in place and so forth to make that a non-issue? But there are all sorts of challenges when we add intelligent technologies to the transportation and other modalities in our life that we interact with. As we add intelligent technologies, there are all sorts of new, very human questions that we have to answer and actually program into the solutions we build. And so suddenly, wicked problems become wicked opportunities to get things right. Now, there's a particular framework that Derek, are you advancing the slides so that I stay on time? There's a particular framework that I like to use in order to avoid blind spots in the thought process or in a framework that you build. And so today I'd like to talk to you about internal, external, and big picture. Internal is you and your business. External are your stakeholders, your community, your employees. Certainly we'll spend some time on workforce. And then big picture is about Walworth County. It's about the region for the sake of today's conversation. So this is the age of exponential disruption, and I think I can help you sort of quantify that. We'll get through a few statistics and then start talking about the impact of those forces that are impacting our businesses and our daily lives and our communities. According to Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, he's an economist there and the founder of the World Economic Forum, it's important to understand the concept of exponential versus linear, non-linear versus linear, okay? Because typically the systems that we design, they're extraordinarily linear. 1,000 years ago, it required human beings roughly 3 generations to adapt to new technology, new social mores, etc. 3 generations. But there wasn't a great deal of technological improvement 1,000 years ago, and so it didn't matter much. And today, our ability to adopt new technology has improved vastly. It's approximately 5 to 7 years. The challenge with that means society. That means educators, it means legislators, and so forth. Think about the scooter conundrum for every major city in the United States over the last couple of years as these last mile micro-commuting solutions hit the street in various different business models. We couldn't legislate fast enough to stay ahead of it. Some of it was bad behavior on the part of the companies, some of it was just really slow, linear processes. Around 2007, these lines intersected. As you extend these lines out, what you'll find is that an inability to adopt technologies, create new business models, and innovate causes a gap in business performance. Another way to think about that is this is where the opportunity is. So as we sit here today, we are just a few years away from $1,000 being able to afford you the computing power of one human brain. And by 2039, the human race. And other than the fact that time goes faster than any of us ever appreciate in our less contemplative modes, the future is going to happen faster than we think because it's not simply about computing power, storage costs, bandwidth, and the other technologies that have essentially been demonetized over the last 40 years. It's also this addition of breakthroughs in every walk. If you look at this slide, what you're looking at is a century's worth of innovation in the world. There are 20 lines on this slide, and on the bottom left you'll see some of the innovations of the second industrial revolution. Electricity, the telephone, the black and white television, the radio, so forth. And as you move forward into the third industrial revolution, that's where the adoption of commercial air travel existed and so forth. And you can see some of the upper left, you can see the third and into the fourth industrial revolution. And then to the right of the slide, what you should be noticing is much greater verticality in terms of the adoption by mainstream market. Okay, so it took the telephone 76 years to hit mainstream market. It took the cell phone, the smartphone, 9 years. It's quite a bit faster, and it speaks to this 5 to 7 years that we were talking about just before. The challenge that we face today, going forward in this century, is one similar to, I think, Ray Kurzweil, who's pictured here, captures it best. And it is that over the next 80 years, at today's rate of innovation, today's rate of change, the expectation is that 20,000 years of progress will take place. Okay, so if you look at the last slide and you had 20 lines in over 100 years, that means there would be 4,000 lines in the next century of these major breakthrough technologies: the refrigerator, the telephone, electricity, black and white televisions, color televisions, gaming systems. The rest of this century ends up looking a little bit like this. Now, just because I didn't have time to put all of the lines on here, but really more so if you don't believe the prediction of 20,000 years and you think about 1,000 years, this is what it looks like. So this is just 5% of the prediction, but essentially what he's saying is that, what this says is that instead of every 5 years like the last century, in the century to come, we're talking about every 6 months. If Kurzweil's right, it's every 9 days. Okay, so if we believe 6 months for these innovations, which will continue to accelerate, now the challenge becomes, how quickly can we adopt? How quickly will new technologies that we bring to market be outdated before it ever hits mainstream market? There will be many more failures than ever. And as it relates to industrial technologies, business-to-business technologies, smart factory, etc., the major concern that the consulting firms have is one of paralysis, which is, it's one thing to stand in line for the next iPhone. But if I have to bet $250,000 on the next technology that will help me catapult my business forward, and there's something that's 3 to 6 months away, because that's what happens in our century, or 9 days, when do I make the decision to buy? Now, that doesn't mean we have to go from a 1 to a 5 or from 0 to 100 overnight. There are ways to engineer these systems to be more incremental and the investments more incremental so we can prove our return on investment. These are the technologies related to Industry 4.0. It's always hard to sort of put them around in orbit because typically 5 or 6 of them are combined. They converge. These technologies converge in order to maximize the business value. Here's a list of more. None of these were represented on the previous slide. You don't really need to know these things. You just need to know that they're coming and that they will become a part of your business strategy, your strategic discussions to decide whether or not you're going to adopt a particular technology to move your business forward or your life forward. And so the question becomes, how do you future-proof your business? This is John Chambers from TENXEcosystem, and this is a famous statistic, not because he said it, but because everybody says it. And it's not a very nice one, which is that, there's this principle of creative destruction. In times of extraordinary innovation, companies go away. There have always been winners and losers. There will always be winners and losers, and in the next decade or so, the business outcomes will vary more widely than ever. And so, on one end of the spectrum, we have this challenge that approximately 40% of businesses will cease to exist in a meaningful way in the next 10 years. It's a fun exercise to take a look at the Fortune 500 or even the Wisconsin-based 9 Fortune 500 companies and say, which 3 or 4? It's less fun when you think about 9,200 manufacturers in the state of Wisconsin. You think about these 8 global forces, internal, external, big picture, mindset issues, straight up demographic issues, lots of businesses for sale over the next decade. Private equity companies are well aware. Companies planning roll-ups are well aware. Discounts are expected to be taken based on the fact that minimal investments aren't being made around areas like data analytics, simple automation, things that have to be in place in the next 3 to 5 years if you're on that exit horizon. We're going to spend some time on the middle box, but on the big picture, we have digital globalization. Globalization we're not talking about containers on ships here, we're talking about digital skill sets. The ability that companies have to outsource offshore to Asia, in this century to the African continent, where much of the population growth is expected. Population drives manufacturing. It drives middle-class spending, and it drives manufacturing. And the population growth that will occur between now and 2050 As we get to 9 billion people, or 2100, year 2100, when we get to 11 billion people, most of that growth will actually occur in Southeast Asia and the African continent, and they will be manufacturing centers. The ability that companies will have to outsource to Africa will be the new India. They will be the cost leaders to begin with. So, how do we deal with these forces? I focus some on manufacturing, mostly in Wisconsin and then around the country, but there are 9,200 manufacturers in the state of Wisconsin. There are 476,000 people employed. That's essentially 1 out of 6 employees in the state. It's 18% of the GDP. In the 7-county region that includes Walworth, it's 35% of tradable goods. The eastern half of Wisconsin is much more highly concentrated in manufacturing than 18%. 7 out of 8 manufacturers. So of that 9,200, there are approximately 1,000 that produce products. 8,000 plus companies produce components for those products. So when we apply 40% attrition to 9,200, it's 3,700 companies. The picture is not a great one. It looks a lot like this one, right? 40% attrition over the last 10 years, much deeper if you go back 50 years. We produce more dairy products than ever in Wisconsin today. But we do it with 7,800 farms instead of 60,000. That's the sort of industry out there. Everybody in a good mood now? All right, so let's talk about what we can do about it. There's this concept which actually started in pig farming in Iowa in 1962 called the diffusion of innovation. In 1991, Jeffrey Moore wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm. It sort of became the marketing bible for technology companies. But what he talked about were there are innovators and early adopters. That's the first 16% of the market. There's the early majority. And what the book said is if you can't get to the early majority, your company will likely stagnate and ultimately die. So you need to figure out a way to get beyond the early adopters to the early majority. Today, I think there's an entirely different chasm. And that one is from the buy side. So as business owners, as community leaders, we need to be looking at the opportunity to have people finding ways to make decisions fast enough to be in the first half of the market. The reason for that is this hype curve. When you apply this curve, which is a Gartner hype curve, to this chasm theory, you find that the business value is in the first half of the market. After that, you're playing catch up, and you can't maximize or optimize value for an individual business or a region of businesses. Okay? So the thought becomes, how do we become more proficient at adopting technology? Some of that is a mindset challenge. Some of it is the way we are sold to. Some of it is the way we make decisions and buy. But the requirement over the next decade for every business is to find ways to continually build momentum. Propulsion, constant propulsion, continuous improvement. Okay? This adaptability. As you see this rapid change, markets will change more rapidly than ever. Business outcomes will be more widely varied than ever. And the opportunity that we have is to find ways to work together to build the value. So my job today is not really, I don't want to convince you or try to convince you of anything. I really just want to put you in a position where you're thinking about this a little differently, maybe with a little more data behind you, a little more perspective, so that you decide that it's time for you to personally and for the sake of your business formulate some response. Some potential responses could be establishing speed as a core value. How many of you have speed as a core value in your business today? It becomes a necessary component. Not reckless speed, not reckless abandon, but just the thought of it doesn't need to be perfect. Right? It's an Amazon principle and among many other cultures of innovation. How do we move a little bit faster rather than trying to get everything perfect? Build a culture of innovation. Anecdotally, not statistically, but anecdotally, as I talk to the commercial lenders around the state, around the Midwest really, we talk about the level of innovation that's occurring within manufacturing, whether it be on the production and delivery side in terms of implementing technologies to increase customer satisfaction, to improve the customer journey, to optimize operations, etc. Or on the new product development side, the anecdotal number is that less than 10% of companies are actively innovating. Less than 10. And so the question becomes, how do we change that? How do we change that mindset? If you're one of the 8,000 plus component suppliers, process manufacturers in Wisconsin, what are you waiting for in terms of your 2-decade-long customer relationships to deliver a new spec to your business to add a sensor, a smart sensor to the component you've made for the last 8 years? When will be the right time for you to have the capability to approach your customer with that innovative concept to say, what if we did this? Could that lead to a stronger customer relationship? Could that lead to an improved customer lifetime value if you became part of the innovation solution? And then lastly, on this slide, the smart connected economy. This is an economy that's a $25 trillion market. It is the combination of IoT and AI. It starts with IoT. We have to be censoring things. The number of connected devices in the next 5 years will increase by 5x, 5 times growth in the number of connected devices. How many of those can come from Wisconsin? Okay, so let's switch to the workforce of the future. You might see, I have to just press off. You might see the future of robotics and their involvement in your business like this, where robotics, this might be a little bit like a cobot. It helps you lift up the people. Or you might see it like this, and some of the people that work for you and work with you might see it like this. A little slightly more dystopian view. Regardless of how you view it, when will you formulate a response as a business around robotics? People that see it as a solution point to this statistic, that as hard as it is with 3% unemployment essentially, to find people to fill the roles today, it's only going to get more difficult in the next 10 years. There will be 5 million fewer people in the workforce. Simple demographics, people retiring versus people of the age to enter the workforce. So the challenge that we have to attract and acquire new talent is harder than ever, backed up by that chart. Now, 87%, 7 out of 8 employers thinking about automation and intelligent technologies are planning to increase the number of jobs that they have as a function of that. So you'd think you'd feel pretty good about it. But job growth will be highly distributed and highly uneven throughout the United States. This is a McKinsey study from about probably 2 months ago now. It actually breaks it down by county. I would encourage you to have a quick look at the data. You know, whenever automation has come to be like these power looms, that picture was of Edward Ludlum. His friends called him Ned. Ned Ludd, the Luddites. When we think about Luddites today, those are people that don't necessarily react well to new technology. What they really didn't react well to was the wholesale firing of artisan workers in the textile mills. They replaced those multi-generation artisans with people from the fields who could very easily operate a power loom. It turns out that throughout time, when you threaten somebody's ability to put food on the table, there's an uprising. And this is the challenge that we face even today. This article is 2 weeks old. Every industrial revolution has been fear of robots, there's been fear of automation, there was fear that computers were going to take everybody's job as well. And it continues on today. That's why websites like this exist. This is an actual website. You can plug in your title. I encourage you to jump on your phone right now, plug in your title, and see if you should sit in the room or not. The issue here is that there will be great disruption, and it's important to understand the mindset of your workforce, of your team, of your family members who might be feeling similarly. This statistic from McKinsey and World Economic Forum talks to the point that perhaps as many as 1 out of 4 workers in the world will be displaced, meaning they have to change jobs, 1 out of 4. This is a much larger issue than the jobs you can't fill today because you can't find the people, because you can't hire the people. It's a much more significant issue, is the reskilling, upskilling, and new skilling of the individuals that are part of your incumbent workforce. Almost half of those 800 million are likely to have to change job descriptions to the point where they'll have an entirely different category than they're in today. This is a great deal of rework that needs to be done and change that needs to be managed during this next decade. This is a 2030 statistic. The most concerning statistic that you'll see today is this one. Today is the eve of 2020. What this says is that if you have a 70-person company, roughly 40 of them, 38 of them, have to be reskilled, upskilled, or new skilled by 2022. Okay. If you have 500 people, roughly 280 of them have to be reskilled in the next 3 years at a cost of $24,800 per employee on average. Now this, if you do it on your own. However, there's other research. This is from October of last year. But January of this year, there was other research that came out that said, you know, if we did this on a regional basis, let's take, for instance, Walworth County as opposed to the 7 counties, the cost of reskilling could be as low as $5,000 to $10,000 per employee. So if you own a business right now, just do the math on $15,000 savings times approximately half your workforce. And know that because of the disruption and change in technology over the next century, but certainly over the next couple of decades, if you intend to hang on to your business for that long, this will be a constant need. And so the opportunity to reduce costs by sharing and building joint training programs and working closely with incredible organizations like Gateway, which is this jewel of an asset that we have in southeastern Wisconsin, with the #1 Industry 4.0 training center at the IMET Center in Sturtevant in America, right, by all accounts. So you can talk to every robotics, mechatronics, every vendor. This is the #1 place. They're doing some pretty cool things in Ohio, but Wisconsin gets it right in terms of high school and college training, and certainly Gateway is the leading example there, and their leadership team is leading some of that conversation on a national level. So I would rather pay $5,000 or $10,000 per employee on an ongoing basis rather than trying to figure out how to budget for $25,000 per employee. And then what that equates to is approximately 200 hours per year. So that slides at hard costs. Don't forget about the costs related to paying them while they're being trained, right? And the conversation about, can that be during working hours? Can you afford 5 weeks a year of additional learning time? Sort of the Google rule of 10%, 20%, right? 20%, 10% of the week going to learning. Are we good with that? I don't think that conversation has started in too many businesses in earnest. But know that this is not 2030 or 2050 or further out. It's 2022. Significant amount of disruption. Right now, if I graduate high school and I go get a $15 an hour job at the Amazon Fulfillment Center doing pick and pack, they will also fund 95% of my education. And there's a Gateway campus on the Amazon campus. And certainly many more within a certain radius, right? So $17.50 an hour doesn't get it done. This generation is interested in understanding where they're going next. And by the way, this generation is not, I'm not talking about Gen Z. I'm talking not only about millennials. I'm talking about all of us. Continuous learning is a lovely cliche, but it is now necessary. I think during my week-long introduction, not Greg's fault, Tobias' fault, I talked about 2 certificates that I've achieved over the last couple of years. I'm 50 years old. I'm on the advisory board for supply chain at Marquette University. The cost of that master's degree was $35,000. So I don't need a master's degree in supply chain. So what I decided to do was take a look at what programs were available to me, and for $1,180, I have a certificate, a credential from MIT. And so that's 1 credit hour in the master's degree program. Now, I don't need a master's degree, many people do, so there's different paths, but what's being worked on right now in the Higher Education Regional Alliance, which is another unprecedented and unparalleled effort around education in Wisconsin, is, among other things, shared resources, shared facilities, shared curriculum, shared staff. In addition to that, stacked credentials, innovative programming to find ways to give people some credential after 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, as opposed to requiring an accredited, credit-bearing class for everything. Right? There will be many different, we have to be adaptive to what the needs are. If some 50-year-old person is looking for some additional baseline foundational information with regard to a given area of study, we need to be able to put ourselves in a position to deliver that. So these are things that are being worked on, and I want to encourage you as employers to be involved in that thought process, to help start building the pathways for individuals. As Accenture looks at every role on your team, in your organization, they break it into 3 categories. That which is uniquely human, that which can be augmented, and that which can be automated. When you look at the data attached to that, all you really need to do, you don't need to read the eye chart, you just need to look at the combination of blue and gray and recognize that for 9 out of the 10 job categories, part of the role can either be augmented or automated. More than 80% of the role can be automated or augmented. So where are you in terms of thinking about the pathways in your organization for your employees to grow as you apply automation? This doesn't have to be about manufacturing and robotics. This can be about artificial intelligence technologies in your customer service team or your HR team or your accounting team. These roles are going to change significantly, and the challenge that we have, and it's one best taken on by regions instead of individuals, is to find ways to build new standards, to define these roles and create the career ladders that are available to us. It's what Deloitte calls super jobs. So, yeah, exactly. But AI, but I can't work a clicker. So Deloitte they think about standard jobs as we think about them, and then there are hybrid jobs, because as automation comes in, roles will change. Some people on your 5-person team will do something else, and the hybrid role will be left for the people that are remaining in that position. And then when you add computing technologies, they can widen the scope of their role, because the intelligent technologies will help them, what Deloitte calls perform super jobs, which are parts of the role we've never thought of before. You've probably seen this slide, but 2022 jobs landscape, you can see the great emphasis on data, technology, in every company, in every role. And this is always an interesting statistic, that 2 out of 3 young students today will have a job that doesn't exist, and that sounds fictional. But if you take a look at these jobs that are just now becoming available, this is around 50 jobs, a lot of strange titles in there, that will be here, right? Because human beings have to keep the technology straight. Now, learning in the flow of life. Here's the old paradigm. Learn, work, retire. Maybe keep working a little bit. These days, if you talk to, you look at the data, don't just talk to people, but talking to people and look at the data. About 3 out of 4 people at retirement age are expecting to remain in their current role of just 15 to 20 hours a week, which sounds great, because we want to keep that institutional knowledge. Where appropriate, we want that mentoring in our organization. But at the same time, we've never dealt with that from an HR standpoint, right? That's a level of complexity in every business that we've never really dealt with before. Well, he just wants to hang out 15 to 20 hours a week, but he'd like the same pay if that's okay. Right? So think about that. Is that okay at 65? Is that okay at 70? Is that okay at 75 as life elongates, as careers elongate? These are things that we'll be taking on. But that old model of front-loading education is gone. And what we're doing now is taking a look at a paradigm of learn, work, and it's a continuous cycle throughout our careers, all of us. Doesn't matter if you're on the other side of 50. You will have to learn something in the next 10 years that you do. Formally learn something. Be trained, get a certificate, get a credential. It's these skills. Technical skills are extraordinarily important, but as I go around the country, mostly at the behest of Dr. Albrecht, and I work with 2-year schools and 4-year schools throughout the country, we oftentimes talk about these 15 skills, and many of them match what's in the annual report, from the Wceda annual report at your tables. These very human skills become extraordinarily important if you're looking for people to fill roles in the middle, those jobs that have not been created yet. But in addition to that, there's this need, a greater need, more so than ever before, to actively collaborate. Not just collaborate, but converge. So how can you future-proof the workforce? Here are just a few thoughts. Pathways. This is a term that's very common for those in training or education and so forth. But it used to be a lot easier to define a career path, that lateral and linear career path for somebody when they walk in the door. Today, it's much more dynamic. Can't expect people to be there for more than 6 or 7 years, but they're expecting you to put them in a position to move on to something better, which means they want to acquire skills during the time that they're with you. Is that okay? If I'm a $15 an hour employee at Amazon, I can be getting my nursing associate's degree at the same time. Because their message is, from an employee attraction standpoint, come work for us, we'll set you up for life. Right? We'll put you on the path that you want to be on. And that's how they get $15 an hour employees to stay for 2 years instead of the 3 to 6 months that they were last. And by the way, 2.5 years is what software companies average. So it's pretty great performance in terms of what that ROI is on that spend. We need to put human beings at the center of everything we're doing, every system we design in our organization. Whether we're building pathways, just want to go over a couple of things. Whether we're establishing, like speed, continuous learning as a core value. Whether we ourselves as leaders, business leaders, have to understand the impact that technological innovation is having on the mindsets of the workforce. How many of us go to work every day in fear that we'll ultimately be replaced by some automated technology? And then building a regional talent ecosystem. So there's a common theme here, which is around innovation, being people-centric. At a time when 54% of workers needs to be reskilled, and only a third are actively engaged, and in fact almost one out of four are actively disengaged at work. There's this unique opportunity we have to build pathways with people in mind. Now it's an oversimplification, but it's sort of the Amazon philosophy on, and we'll fund your education. But if we can develop systems and processes and pathways for individuals, we have a much better job at talent retention, much better chance at talent retention in our businesses. If we can design something where they find purpose and value, especially if it's something they can move on to, maybe even outside of our organization. And I recognize that that's an extraordinary paradigm shift for businesses, small, medium, and large. But it's where the workforce is, and we need to meet them there. Now, this last piece is about the need to do this together. The very largest companies in the world do not do this on their own. They collaborate. Ford and Volkswagen are collaborating today on new product designs to take on the electric vehicle manufacturers. There are partnerships and ecosystems that are being built throughout the world by the largest, most powerful companies for one reason, so they remain relevant. And if you're not part of the innovation, smart, connected economy today, will you or your customer be relevant in 3 years? That company that provides you with 18% of your revenue every year through a 15-year relationship that you've had supplying components, will they be relevant or will they be disrupted? You need to solve these issues together. The challenge with that is that technology is exponential, but every system we've ever built, the way we're wired, is linear. I'll give you an example. Tesla. Every hour of operation, every smart connected vehicle produces 4 terabytes of data. And Tesla has access to that. They don't use all of it, but there are 5 signals, the 5 telemetries listed on the right, that help them improve the autonomous driving system in their car. Okay? And then every time they do a software upgrade, the entire fleet benefits. So if we all drove around in Teslas, the way I drive would benefit all of you, and the way each of you drive would benefit me, and so on. And that is exponential. Because it's the convergence of information, of data. Most small and medium-sized businesses in this region, small businesses, think of it as 250 employees or fewer, do not produce enough data on their own to maximize the results of business intelligence, advanced data analytics, and so forth. You can have an incremental impact. But by finding ways, and Microsoft is pushing hard on this right now, finding ways to have an open data platform to share information, especially machine learning data and so forth, between companies is the only way that small and medium-sized businesses will be able to truly leverage these technologies. So for every investment that we're thinking about making, make sure that your company on its own can actually benefit like the large companies can. And if you can't, the opportunity is to form communities of companies who are working on the same stuff. There's no reason why any company in here should be paying, forgive me all accounting firms and advisory firms in the room, $1,000 an hour for a couple of partners to come down to decide what the first 10 business metrics are that matter beyond your financials. If this were 1978, that would be a laminated sheet in a 3-ring binder. And today, we need to create that 3-ring binder so that perhaps the 12 metrics that I find most important aren't the same 12 as Derek. Maybe we have a different level of priority around each of those. That's simple data visualization, but we need to stop the process of educating one-on-one. By using something like capability maturity modeling, which is just a 1 to 5 scale, if I'm a 1, if this side of the room is filled with 1s and 2s, and you're all 3s, 4s, and 5s, we can't really do much together. We can do this. We can convene. People are really good at convening. But we don't converge. And we can't find ways to work together for 90 days because you're 2 years ahead of us. Why would you do all the heavy lifting? You'll let me buy you lunch. Don't get me wrong. You'll feel really smart and I'll feel better informed. But in terms of lifting up the capability of our organization, we need to find ways to curate groups. And there are frameworks that exist to do this, and it's not that hard. To pair current state and target state, to pair priorities, and actually work together. I'm not talking about work together with the company that you run into 8 days a week with quoting. I'm talking about the company that's down the street that is in a similar but not the same business as you, or maybe the same business, but you actually supply one another and you're less competitive and you just don't compete on the paradigms from the 80s and 90s. This is the challenge in front of us, and if the region wants to take a lead, like Walworth County, if a region wants to take the lead, it would be about speed and collaboration. It would be about creating an expertise, not just around innovation and new product development and design, but also our ability to adopt and leverage technologies, the ability to create closed loops on data to get much more signal like Tesla or like Mark Forge, which was the picture that was up, the 3D printing company, has grown 12,000% in the last 3 years. Greg Mark, the CEO, who was pictured on the last slide, was telling me a couple of weeks ago at an event in Milwaukee that They have 10,000 machines in the field today, 3D printers. Every week, 6 of them sit down, including Greg, and they do a review of 10 jobs that didn't go well, that didn't print well. He's an MIT mechanical engineer, okay? 6 people, 10 jobs a week. They also have an AI doing the same work, and today, the human beings still outperform the AI. And they believe there's a 12 to 18-month fuse there, where the AI will actually, from a quality standpoint, outperform the human beings, 12 to 18 months. The difference today is that those 6 people, the business can afford to do 10 jobs a week. The AI can already do 10 a second. So the exponential ability to leverage the data of every 3D printing job that runs through a Markforged printer is what makes the technology and the company exponential, because the software upgrade that will occur across the network of 10,000 printers will impact everybody. Meanwhile, here's the everybody part. This is what it looks like. Everybody benefits. When we implement technology as individual businesses, or we implement new workforce strategies, here's what it looks like. And that's it. Right? Just the upper left. But that's 10 companies, so it's actually this. And then we all do this. And we do this without telling anybody, whether the result is green, red, or yellow. Whether it was a great result. If it's a great result, we don't want anybody to know that we did something that might offer a 3 to 6 month competitive edge. And if it's a bad result, heaven forbid anybody knows that we messed up. Where we would benefit and make this much more exponential is by sharing data in these discretely organized projects. We can go much faster and make smaller bets. You don't have to spend $150,000. You could divide that by 10. You could include 10 companies and innovate more often, and achieve more within your budget in the same year. So how can we future-proof Walworth County? Sorry, Darwin. Survival of the fittest. You have to collaborate. You have to be adaptive. Change. And business leaders have to drive that change. The willingness to come together. It simply takes frameworks to reorganize work. I'm not suggesting it's easy. I am suggesting I've spent 2 years involved in building the frameworks, and they exist, and you can work together immediately. It's simply a dynamic group of cross-industry partners working together to design, build, and implement value-added technology solutions. It's just a network of networks. All of you have got your own business network. If you brought that to a group of 10 companies who were actually working together to implement some new solution around data, to get from a 1 to a 1.4 in 90 days at a cost of X divided by 10. Much more efficient. And the closed loop on the results would inform that next community, that next cohort. Meanwhile, you get to learn about cybersecurity from them. Every major analyst firm, and I've sadly studied all of them and synthesized the data and picked midpoints, every major analyst firm in the last 6 months has written about ecosystems. 7 of the 12 largest companies in the world are based on ecosystems. $60 trillion, or 30% of revenue worldwide by 2025 will come from digital ecosystems, 50% of corporate revenue by 2030. 3 out of 4 CEOs believe that their existing business models, this is 1,250 CEOs talking to Accenture, their existing business models will be irrelevant within 5 years, and that ecosystems will be a primary agent of change. 5 out of 6 believe that they're an important part of their strategy, and 5 out of 8 would build one on their own to disrupt their industry. So I built TENX Manufacturing. We started in the spring of this year. There are 118 manufacturers. There are 54 qualified service providers. The basic principle is this. I built the frameworks by which companies like Plastic Oil qualify to do business with Foxconn. They're receiving an award today. They should get another one for their level of customer satisfaction. The basic principle of an ecosystem approach is it's not for everybody. This doesn't save the 40% of companies who don't want to make investments. That's a business decision. The companies that want to grow and go faster have an opportunity to participate for a fraction of the cost. We take high-performing manufacturers, we pair them with high-performing service providers, and we create closed-loop data cycles. And the probability of better business outcomes, more predictable business outcomes, is higher. It's a much different way than doing it on your own. The map looks a little bit like this today. This is about 60% accurate with various stakeholder groups. It ties right into the higher ed. We work on these challenges: talent gap, the entire continuum from attraction to retention with learning and development and onboarding and so forth in between. Implementing Industry 4.0 and new product development. We create ecosystems of manufacturers, surround them with experts that are high performers. We help. Here's another major issue. This is the last point. If I'm a 1 today, great. You can come and sell me a 4. You can try. You can sell me the vision of a 4. Tomorrow, I can only be a 2. There are very few leapfrogs that occur in this world as it relates to capability and maturity in a company. I might need to understand the vision in order to make that investment, but I really, as it relates to cybersecurity, automation, AI, data analytics, and things that impact every business, I need to be a 2. And I need to understand what the shortest path to that is with the highest probability of success. And that's what we do by surrounding them with experts, companies that deliver. That's the approach. Minimum viable transformation. That's the approach. How can we have vision for what excellence looks like, what the leaders in industry are doing, but achieve it incrementally? Incremental investment, incremental resource utilization, and more collaboration than ever before. And more data, more proof points than ever before. And again, human-centric design, whether you're building an ecosystem or a product. But I want to say thank you again to Derek and to the gents here. Greg for the nice introduction, and to all of you for your time. That's well past my time. Thanks for listening.
I appreciate that, Dave, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. I'm sad that you're going to be retiring. I know that a lot of people are. I just want to say, as I was listening to Todd's remarks there and his presentation, the only thing I could think is my brain was burning on all cylinders, and when you talked about the new fire, I felt like my head was on fire. Would love to talk more about that and break that apart, but of course we can't do that. But I hope that all of you will go back and take some of this back to your respective organizations and think through these things, because Wceda and Todd, I appreciate that you did part of the work for me, just talking about our role, and part of our role is really to facilitate some of these things that you talked about with collaboration with education partners and business partners and things like that. And so I hope what you could see from the presentation, is how important that is, and as we try to get around it, we hope that you will support us. I look at the group here, and it's always exciting for us. We talk about being a love-hate relationship with this event because there's so much that goes into it initially to get it to go, but then once you're here seeing everybody networking and just everybody that you've worked with throughout the year, it's exciting, and I just want to thank everybody for all the support that you've given us over time. I'm going to cut this back a little bit. I don't think I need to tell you that things are going well in the county. You look around, there's building going on all around the county in most of our municipalities with industrial, commercial, even in our downtowns, and it's exciting. In the last 5 years ago, it wasn't happening. Within the last 2 years, there's a lot going on. I know you hear a lot of reports. We've had such a long period of prosperity. There's got to be a recession around the corner, but a lot of reports, and I think even what Todd was mentioning here is that a lot of what I'm hearing and finding is that we probably could have a couple of good years for sure more. So hope people keep going strong, and if you're going to be doing some kind of expansion or thinking about that, let us come and talk. Hopefully there's a way that we can bring some resources to you. really just a couple of things that I would like to say. I think we do a really nice job in the report, kind of recapping some of our major work. Of course, development is huge. You know, we want to work with people expanding or coming to the area. Workforce, we mentioned Inspire and the manufacturing group. We're going to continue with that. Going to focus that a little bit more this year around 4 main industries that are big drivers and where there's a strong link here. And so that would be in manufacturing, healthcare, construction, and hospitality. So you'll see some activities and things that we're doing around that. And I would like to just say that in the annual report, first of all, I really would like to do some thank yous. So first of all, to our sponsors, to our major ones that were here today that helped us with that. Thank you to all of you. You can see we have a long list of sponsors, so I really want to thank you for that. We wouldn't be able to do that without you, and we're able to utilize that for some of our workforce development pieces. Also want to thank our board members, and we have quite a few, so I won't list those, but if you look in our annual report, we have all of them listed, I believe, on page 7. They've been a tremendous resource and asset for us as an agency, financially, with their guidance, and just the dedication and commitment, so I really appreciate that. Also want to thank our staff, Leslie Gostomski, Lisa Pivet, and Ian Spolarich. I'm proud of the work they do. They work very hard. They're engaged. They care about what they're doing, and I think we even had fun at times. Maybe not last night, but most of the time. I want to thank the county board, Nancy Russell, who is the chair. You've been very supportive, and the whole board. I appreciate that, as well as Dave Brettel. We have volunteers that come every year here, Jim and Roberta Killian and Egla Vasque. I want to thank you for that. Of course, I want to thank the Grand Geneva. They always do an excellent job. Did have a fun little video clip, but we'll send that out, I think, in a follow-up to this. What I'd really like to do is move to our awards section. And the first award that I want to talk about is their Dr. Spitzer Award, because, as Dave referenced earlier, a very special man to the agency and just to the community at large. And we're so pleased to have his wife Dolores here. And we thought about, what could we do to just put together just a simple little thing that I want to go over before we actually present the award winner. And so I knew Dr. Bob for the 5 years that I was working in this role before he passed, and couldn't have been a more gracious person. Advance this here. And you can just see some of a little bit of background here on the screen. I won't go through that, but just has an incredibly amazing life and accomplishments that he was able to do throughout his life. Just so positive and such an inspiration to people. I did corner Dave a few days ago, and I said, Dave, let's just, because we might not have time, or it might not be convenient, so let's do something here. And it's just probably a 2-minute video, but I think it'd be fun to play that real quick. So I don't know if I hit.
I first met Dr. Bob in 2005. That year, the Kenote Corporation had made a decision to invest in our fledgling economic development project that we were trying to organize in Walworth County. Mick Nishek was actually the first person to reach out from Kenote, and he said he had 2 things for us. The first was a $10,000 check, and the second was Dr. Bob Spitzer. Over time, it turned out that as generous as the $10,000 was, Dr. Bob was a far better part of that deal. He worked through all of the different organizational meetings that we had to launch Wceda, and was actually a board member for many years and served the organization. But it was through helping and assisting him with different projects that I was able to learn a lot from him. One of the projects that we worked on was to have his papers and different artifacts that he had over the years from many different roles that he served in accepted into the State Historical Society. And that was, I think, the mic drop for Dr. Bob and his stellar career, 3 different careers probably that he had. He was a great patriot, but he was so appreciative of the sacrifices that were made by others, and dedicating himself to the cause of veterans was very important. The one takeaway that I have from Dr. Bob is the old adage, if you love the world, it'll love you back, and I think Bob exemplified that. He loved the world, he loved people. But he would take time to reach out to anybody, and he was interested in their well-being and their education. And so I certainly appreciate the time that Dr. Bob spent with us and with the Wceda organization, and he was a great man.
Really was a great inspiration. And so we wanted to put together an award that would celebrate one of his talents, which was really, I mean, one of his many talents, but putting together public-private organizations that would benefit the community. And so I'm really pleased to announce today that the winner of that award is Geneva Supply, and I'm just going to give a 1-minute background on that. But you know, I work with, obviously, we look into workforce, we evaluate, and we're always looking for new workforce development and engagement programs, and what they're doing at Geneva Supply with their Biz Tank and Biz Hub program is just amazing. I mean, to see how they're able to engage these kids in the development and getting them thinking about starting their own businesses or having an entrepreneurial spirit. Or just exploring local career options. It's amazing. I haven't seen anything like that in the region and probably nationally. So really proud that they're able to be the recipient. And I think we have Melissa from Geneva Supply that's going to come up.
Okay, Derek did give me the option that I didn't have to get up here, but if you know Jeff, he made me do it. And since he's not here, I will keep it much shorter than if he were. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Melissa DeBuck, the Senior Marketing Manager at Geneva Supply, and I'm also the Chaos Controller of Biz Tank, our nonprofit organization. And for those of you that do know about us and support us, thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you. If you could bear with me while I explain the program just a little bit to those that don't know about it. In 2016, Geneva Supply was ranked number 29 on the Entrepreneur Magazine 360 list. That's when our co-founders, Mark Becker and Jeff Peterson, were invited to speak to the entrepreneurship class at Delton Darien High School, where surprisingly, kids were asking a lot of questions and generally seemed to they were interested in what our company, a distribution company that helps manufacture the e-commerce platforms, it was a big deal for them. And when they got back, Jeff realized that there's a disconnect between the business community and the schools. And that's no fault to the teachers, as they have a curriculum they have to follow. And there's only so much time in a class or a semester, whatnot. So that's when they had the discussion, and it sparked the idea that a career exploration and scholarship program was needed. We offer 3 seasons per school year, so fall, winter, spring. Each are 8 weeks long, and it's where they can meet local business people and learn about their companies, the jobs there, and what kind of education is needed to obtain those positions. We then have a keynote speaker who tells their story about where they were in high school, what they thought they wanted to do, what they did do, all the things, their successes, their failures, and then we encourage the kids to connect with them. We wrap up the night with an episode of our podcast, Kids in the Tank, where 3 to 4 of those kids interview the keynote speaker. Then they end the session with a little round table where they talk about the latest hot topics and trends, things that are exciting in their world, and I encourage you all to listen to an episode or 10, because it's actually quite fascinating and amazing to hear the things that are relevant to them, and shockingly, they probably know more in the news than I do, but teach their own. Then, if a student, or biz kids as we lovingly call them, If they successfully complete a season of BizTank, they'll be awarded a $500 scholarship upon graduation. That's $500 per season. So it's for high school juniors and seniors, so if you can do math, it's easy math, so I can do it. They can get up to $3,000, which is awesome, and it doesn't matter what their GPA is, so it's really an exceptional program for those kids that have no idea what they want to do when they grow up. So we're in our 3rd school year, our 8th season. We are wrapping up in the next couple of weeks. We've had 239 kids go through the program, representing 12 local schools and 1 homeschooled student. We have awarded over $100,000 in scholarships, and those numbers keep climbing. BizTank, we've had a lot of kids stay in touch. On average, Jeff probably gets an email, a Facebook, a LinkedIn message, I would say every other week, whereas I get a bunch of emails about scholarship redemptions. There's a lot of those. But with that, I encourage you all to learn more about BizTank, get involved however you can, whether that's sharing your story or offering job shadows, financial, however you can support is awesome, because we feel that by connecting with these kids now, they're more likely to stay and work here or come back after college if that's what they choose to do. And as cliche as it may sound, kids are the future, so why not work together to educate, expose them to all the opportunity right here in Walworth County. Again, check us out at gsbiztank.org. There's flyers on your way out, or you can talk to me or anyone over at Geneva Supply. Again, thank you so much for recognizing us. We appreciate it.
Great. So our next award, one of our awards that we wanted to feature again this year was a Business Technology Investment Award, because as you can hear from today, it's so important to be doing that, and so we want to recognize companies that are doing that, and want to recognize them to hopefully inspire other companies. And so it's interesting that Todd recognized or noted that Plastic Oil, they've been a great supporter of just community supporter of what we're doing with the manufacturing, and I was really pleased that they won the award today. And I'll just say one thing about it. In talking with Larry Austin about when he started this business, he said, I could have easily just retired and gone down to Florida, which he would probably regrets right about now. But instead, he took some funds and he invested in a local manufacturing company, and is really, really sincere about giving local people good job opportunities. And I just think that's great, to the extent where he also bought another small company, TriTech, and brought them into Lake Geneva. And so really pleased, Larry, if you could come up and accept the award. I really appreciate it.
If it's okay, I'm going to keep this really short and sweet. I know you'd like to sit here for a while longer, but I've got to get back to work. Anyway, thank you, Derek, and thank you, Wceda, for this award. What I'd like to do is just tell anyone we're located right here in Lake Geneva. We have 2 plastic injection molding companies and a tool company. We're putting money back into it. But if anybody wants to see what we're doing, feel free to dig me up. I'll give you a tour. I always love showing people around what we're doing. We have over 50 employees right now. We started the business with about 40, about 3.5 years ago. So anyway, thank you very much. I know we all got to get back to work. So, really. Anyway, well, what Derek's talking about, we've just put a lot of money back into the business in new molding machines. We've gotten 7 new molding machines. We have about 39, so it's around almost 20%. We put a lot into technology. My son Patrick is heading up a program right now where all of our machines will be tied together. We'll have iPads on each machine. All that goes to a server. We'll be able to tell how our machines are running, what our cost is, what our production is looking like, and what's the next job going into it. So we're trying to use technology. Todd, I appreciate your comments there. I might go sell businesses and retire though after that. Anyway, my wife and I have a great time. We know all of our employees. We have a lot of fun with them, and we try and make it a great place to work. Derek's been there a number of times. We really enjoy what we're doing, but it's not easy, and we do have to get into technology, and that's what we're doing with robotics and this whole computer system. It's going well. It's going to be really interesting to see. It'll be online in a couple months, hopefully, or next week. Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, last award that we have is in honor of Dave, and I had a spiel that I was going to do, but I'll have to say that for his official retirement party. But I do want to say how much I appreciate having worked with you, and you've really been a mentor to me and to a lot of people. So thank you for everything you've done for the county. Really appreciate that. We created this award a few years ago to talk about community betterment, because under Dave's leadership and the board's support and their leadership, done incredible things here at the county, and so we wanted to recognize community betterment. It's hard because with all these, we get a lot of good submissions that are all worthy of receiving the award, but this year the committee chose the Walworth County Food Pantry, and Susan and John Hughes had taken this over in 2007 from another family who had started that was wanting to retire, but I believe did not have really a plan in place to sustain it, and they've done a lot to expand what they're doing and put a plan in place to sustain that. And I'm going to actually invite one of their board members, Marianne Muller-Gunderson, to talk a little bit more about what they're doing. But it's just an amazing organization and their reach and what they're doing. So we really appreciate all the efforts. And if Marianne could come up and say a few words, I'd appreciate it.
It is absolutely a great privilege to accept the David Rettel Community Betterment Award for WC Food Pantry. Our director, Susan Hughes, and her husband, John, are on a much-deserved vacation to the coast of California. They have been so devoted to build the pantry that this is their first vacation in 3 years, so good for them. The pantry is available to all residents of Walworth County who are experiencing food scarcity. We currently serve 550 families. Every time we open, we add new guests to our roster, so our numbers continue to soar. Each guest has a choice of fresh fruit, vegetables, eggs, a variety of breads, canned goods, and meat. WC has the only diaper bank in our county, meeting a huge need for our low-income families. We also provide incontinence supplies for seniors and for others who are embarrassed to admit that they need them. The government brings us fresh milk that our farmers are not able to sell, and we distribute it to all 10 food pantries in our county. Each of our guests meets with a screener who discerns what their current needs are. I'm one of the screeners, and I want to tell you the story of one of our recent guests. I can't reveal his identity, so I'm just going to call him Fred. It was his first time at the pantry, and he was visibly distraught as I met with him. Fred was a senior citizen who had lost his wife to cancer. Their exorbitant medical bills left him with huge debts to pay after her death. He had not eaten anything all day when I saw him, and he told me he had no food left in his house whatsoever. Then he told me, I'm a veteran, and I'm so grateful that I could serve my country, but now I can't feed myself, and I feel so ashamed that I had to come here. He broke down and wept in my arms, and when he regained his composure, I told him Don't you ever apologize again for needing help. You have valiantly served our country, putting your life on the line for us. It's our turn to serve you. Each person who comes to the pantry has a story to tell. We thank you for helping us meet their needs, to restore their dignity through this gracious community award. Thank you.
There's also a donation that was made for you that we'd like to present to you. All right, great. So just the last part, I'd like to recognize we have every year have a few board members that will be turning out, and this year Pete Watlett from Baker Tilly and Mike Jackson. I know Mike had to leave earlier, but they served 62 3-year terms. They've been incredible for me in terms of mentors and supporters, and have helped professionalize some of the operations that we've done. So I'm really grateful to them, and I hope that we'll still keep in touch. But I'd like to invite up our president, Pat DeMoon, just to say a few words about the outgoing board members.
I mean, I think they're just encapsulated most of what I wanted to say, but this is one of the downsides of term limits, obviously. The upside is that, it keeps our board fresh, new people, new ideas, but the downside is we have to say farewell to people that we'd otherwise like to keep. I really can't thank Pete and Mike enough for everything they've done for our organization. I mean, both have served on the executive committee, as you mentioned. They've really shaped the direction that Wceda's taken in the last few years. I know Mike also served on our finance and budget committee, helping with things like the revolving loan fund, and Pete is one of our past presidents. So again, big thanks to Pete and Mike. I want everybody to give them a big round of applause.
Well, great, thank you, Patrick. So I think that concludes the meeting. I appreciate your spending half of your day here with us. Really appreciate all the support of what we're doing, and hope that we'll be able to visit a lot more and work on collaborative projects going forward. But thank you very much, and have a nice rest of your day.